Thank you, Anne. My little iPad didn't want to work for a second there, so you almost had more time to finish your lunch, but alas, you're going to have to listen to me for a second. I'm really honored to be here today. You know, I made the mistake of looking at the participant list before I came in, and I got really intimidated. You guys are an impressive group of folks and doing a lot of great stuff, so, you know, I'm a little nervous. But I'm excited to have the opportunity to be here to share a little bit about my story. As Elisa said, we do need to share our stories. So I'll take the liberty a little bit to tell you a little bit about myself, and hopefully that will give you some insight into sort of some of the things that drive my work. So I want to thank, obviously, Teach for America and the collective and everyone for having this event and for allowing me to be a part of it. I know Elisa said that she doesn't like to be an exception, but I'm very proud that Teach for America is now being led by a Latina, and a Latina is, and it's clearly, so yes. And it seems to be paying off. I think this year's core, entering core has 600 Latinos, which is actually more than the 500 total core members in Teach for America way back when I went through the program. Some of you were maybe not even born. But so it's exciting, and there really obviously there's the effort to bring more of us, more people of color, more folks who have had similar experiences to our children into the course. So it's very exciting. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience, and I think that the theme today that we're talking about, this idea of instructional excellence and commitment to social justice, is absolutely the right frame for us as school leaders, especially those of us, of course, of color and who serve students of color. And infusing the concept of social justice is really critical to our work, because although we've come a long way in our work, there's way too many communities where we lower our standards and make excuses for our students and ultimately really deprive them of opportunities for success. There's still way too many communities where the attitude is, if you look differently, you can't achieve. If you speak or act differently, you should change so we can help you. In so many communities, diversity is not desired or understood. So I congratulate all of you for participating in these types of discussions and helping us all become more informed so we can continue to advocate on behalf of our students and on behalf of the power that this diversity really brings to our communities and their abilities to succeed. So, because we're all educators and most of you are all principals, I'll give you my objectives for the day. And the caveat is I probably won't meet them all, and some of you will feel deprived, but I apologize ahead of time. I won't get to reteach. But I was asked today to talk a little bit about my pathway to leadership and some of the lessons that I've learned, to talk a little bit about my personal background and my identity and how I feel that has impacted my leadership in terms of the challenges I face and or the advantages that I have because of these things. And then also to share some thoughts about what I believe that we as leaders of color should do immediately and in the long term to ensure success for our students of color. The other caveat is I don't have any answers, so I'll tell you what I think, but certainly you all are doing the work and you have the answer. So let me talk about myself a little bit, and it was exciting as I meet a lot of folks from Teach for America, friends from before, and new people. It's nice to you know, I just sat next to someone who actually did his Teach for America teaching at one of the schools that I attended in Houston, so I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm really honored to talk about my experiences here. So here's my story, and my story is similar to what many immigrants in the United States have experienced, and many of our students, of course. And like many of you, I really truly feel that I'm blessed, and I'm blessed because of this intersection between my Latino heritage and my parents' struggles in pursuit of the American dream. And it's this intersection of these aspects of my life that drive everything that I do as a leader, as a father, as a husband, as a public servant. So. I was born in Mexico in 1967, way before you guys were born. I'm the fourth of 6 children. And when I was 5 years old, my mother and father decided to risk everything and move our entire family to the United States. They sought something simple, right? They wanted a better life for them and for their kids. Again, they sought this American dream. And as in many immigrant stories, my father left first. He was headed to Chicago and just did a pit stop in Houston and thought he was just going to be there for a bit. He befriended a community there of folks, of immigrants who did the same thing he did in terms of vocation, and he decided to stay in Houston. And again, the immigrant story is he got enough money to go back to Mexico and bring the rest of the family, so we moved to Houston. We immigrated to Houston and landed on the north side. So some of you who know Houston, like every city's got a central core of where some of the lower resource communities end up. And in Houston at the time, it was inside the Loop and on the north side, so that's where we landed. And we really ended up in a community of a large Mexican immigrant population, which was very similar to us, of course. And I began my schooling in a bilingual school. My older sisters, however, weren't so lucky. They were in an English-only program because they were too old for the bilingual program in Houston at the time, and so their educational experience was much more difficult than mine. But however, soon after my siblings and I began to get settled in school, my family started what we call sort of the annual migration in my educational history. Although my parents never completed schooling beyond the middle school years, and my father actually only finished through 5th grade, they constantly reminded us that the only way that we were going to be truly successful was through education. My mother and father worked incredibly hard and established in us this belief that hard work, coupled with a good education, would allow you to accomplish absolutely anything you set your mind to. My father started a business, and we all worked alongside with him, getting our hands dirty. As a child, I began to hate my after-school time and my weekends because every after school and on the weekends and during the summer we went and we worked at the business. And I will say that I joined many extracurricular activities and signed up for many summer school courses to try to avoid some of that work. But as my father's business began to do better, we began to move. So I started in kindergarten. I attended Ryan, then we went to Luskin and Brown and Barrack and Roosevelt elementary schools. Each year we moved outward. We were moving out of the Loop and moving outward towards where my parents thought there were better schools. So they didn't really fully understand the American educational system, but they knew that better schools were in the neighborhoods that were more affluent. So by 5th grade, I ended up in the suburbs, and I went to middle school and high school in the suburbs. And my parents' immigration into this country, followed by this annual migration, are what really allowed me to be the first person in my family to receive a college degree. I'm really proud to say that 2 of my older siblings have gone back and completed their studies as well. But still, I can't help feel that I was simply lucky. Although I don't want to diminish the work and the sacrifice of my family and my parents, I was lucky. My parents didn't know anything about GPAs or extracurricular activities or ACTs or SATs. They didn't know any of that. But they knew that if they moved us closer to success, that we'd be okay, there'd be better schools. And so they deliberately placed us on this path to success by moving outward every year. But still, I was lucky. In middle and high school, I just happened to befriend a group of kids whose parents had a better understanding of the educational system. Because of my friendship with them, I signed up for all the things they did, all the right things. I signed up for honors classes when they signed up for honors classes. I signed up to take the SAT when they did that. And when they applied for college, I applied for college. And I did these things often without even telling my parents because they didn't understand. So if it wasn't for my friends, I would have been lost. My teachers and staff, and particularly at these suburban schools, didn't really make any extra effort to help me succeed. They did what they did for all of the other kids and just assumed that I would be okay. In fact, I met my high school counselor just one time during my 5 years of high school, and I remember that meeting very vividly. He called me down to his office near the end of my senior year, and I was very excited, right? What words of wisdom and inspiration and mentorship is he going to give me? I'm sitting outside his office. Never mind it was 5 days before graduation, but I was just naive and excited thinking he was gonna impart me with wisdom. He came out holding an index card. And on this index card, I assumed was gonna be this great wisdom. But instead, he handed me this reminder that no matter how well I'd done in my schooling, that I was still different. No matter how hard I worked, my school didn't know how to deal with me. On that card simply was scribbled and just an approach to phonetically spell my name. His idea was, he had to call my name at the graduation, so he wanted to make sure he pronounced it correctly. So, despite what my high school counselor may have expected of me, my parents' passion for education was always with me, and I was able to attend college and soon began to consider my career options. Now, many of you Latinos know in Mexican families, there are 3 acceptable careers, certainly in my family. You could be a priest, a doctor, or a teacher, right? My mother will tell you I was a terror as a child, so being a priest was out of the question. So I settled on becoming a doctor. In college, I majored in biology, pre-med, and I thought I was on the right track. But then I got involved in teaching and education. I started working with elementary school kids after school, teaching them science. And I really fell in love with the idea of teaching and learning. And then I encountered Teach for America, and I used to curse Wendy Kopp. Not really. I encountered the Teach for America recruiter, and that's how I started in education. And although teaching is on that list of approved careers, I still periodically would tell my mother that I would eventually go back to medical school just to appease her a bit. That didn't happen. I ended up teaching middle school science in Edison Junior High School in South Central Los Angeles, and I never considered myself a master or expert teacher, but I believe I was successful in making connections with my students. I was passionate about encouraging students of colors and girls to get excited about science and about learning. And the simple fact that I looked like them made my classroom management experience a little more manageable, and that fact was not lost on me. Still, what struck me most was the fact that my students simply had limited exposure to many of the things that I and the rest of the kids who were as lucky as me were able to experience. Many had not even been to the beach or to the mountains, places that were within an hour or two drive from where they lived. Few of them ever set the idea of graduating from high school as a goal, and few of them ever thought about or talked about going to college. So I worked hard to expose them to the college experience and to life. And with my mentor at the time, we took kids camping, we went to the beach, we took them skiing, we visited colleges and universities in hopes of exposing them to what could be. I'm extremely proud that several of our students actually went on to college and went on to do great things. So I decided to stay in education and went on to co-found with my lovely wife. We weren't married at the time, but we got married after we started the school, so I can talk to folks about that story in Arizona. And our school was a bilingual school, and it really was dedicated to excellent educational opportunities for children who had not been afforded these opportunities. And launching and running a charter school has many, many challenges, but operating this kind of school was especially difficult in a state like Arizona. In Arizona, the political climate is one that reflects the exact opposite of what we're talking about today. The idea that in Arizona, Latino children and families are told every day that diversity is a bad thing. Children are taught by the larger community that unless you forego this heritage and change your language, that you don't belong and that it's your fault for not being successful. So although my wife and I were passionate about our school and the work we were doing and all the friends we made, we simply couldn't reconcile raising our kids in Arizona. So we moved. We headed to the East Coast, and we were looking for a place to raise our kids that had a more diverse and open-minded climate, and we're excited to have the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., to work for then Chancellor Michelle Rhee, and then, of course, to be a part of that exciting work that she and a lot of the folks here as well at the table were a part of, and that's being continued by Kaya. And I had the opportunity to work with and support the efforts of many educators that were committed to improving the lives of the children of D.C., many of whom these children obviously were misserved by the educational system and didn't really have the opportunities for success. So I was diverted from education for a couple of years and ran the Department of Parks and Recreation in D.C. And one critical area there that we tried to focus on was getting this agency that really had played a key role in the development of a lot of the residents and a lot of the folks in D.C., get them to really shift their culture to serve all of our clients. And so we started bilingual programs and really placed a new focus on including our special needs population, both in our recreation programs as well as our facilities. Now in my current role as the State Superintendent of Education for the state of Washington, D.C., I say that usually when the mayor is around because Brown knows a little bit. He talks a lot about the state of D.C., but my role, I'm charged with setting and implementing educational policy that's going to ensure that our schools serve the 83,000 students that are enrolled in public schools and making sure that they really, truly are serving all students. And I think the fact that I'm an immigrant, and I think I'm the only foreign-born state superintendent, the fact that I grew up in a family that didn't always have enough money, I grew up on free and reduced meals throughout my elementary school years, the fact that my first language was not English, I believe that that's what makes me the leader that I am today. So, as I said at the beginning, I wanted to talk a little bit about the consequence of my Latino heritage as well as my beliefs and the ethics that these instilled in me by my parents. So much of what drives me today is based on the life lessons from my parents and the view that if not for a combination of the hard work and focus and lots of luck, I would not have been successful. So, although I'm incredibly blessed to have the parents who believed passionately about education, who had an incomparable work ethic and who wanted nothing more for their kids than for them to have a better life than they did, my success was, at least to some extent, attributed to chance. There are many children who simply as a result of the zip code they grow up in, the color of their skin, the fact that they may not speak English, simply because they're different, have great challenges that are often unable to overcome. So as I think about what drives me and what makes the leader that I am, the things that I think about every day that drive my work, I think about the fact that the opportunities for success should not be determined by the zip code that you live in. We can't leave that up to chance. We must ensure that educational opportunities are distributed to provide equity, not just equality. We've got to make up for the generations of failure that our system has imparted on many of our children. Our efforts to improve education and ensure instructional excellence have to focus on all of our students all of the time. And we must connect our students, especially our students of color and those who live in poverty, to the same experiences that their non-disadvantaged peers have had, and allow them to see success and opportunity, and allow them to have hope and a sense of aspiration. We must ensure, one of the things like we're doing here is must ensure that more of our teachers and our leaders look like our kids. So as school leaders, your challenge is to ensure that every family is truly given an opportunity for success, regardless of what they look like or where they were born. You must build a culture in your schools that understands the challenges that poverty and hunger place on our students, but also one that doesn't use those as excuses for students to fail. You must build schools that connect each and every child to the school and helps them have hope and a sense of belonging. You must build schools that incorporate diversity into your work and celebrates their heritage, but also that shows our children what their future could look like, and so that they will indeed aspire to succeed. You must build schools that create the types of successes that all of us in this room were privileged enough to have had. So I thank you for all of the work that you do every day on behalf of our children. Gracias.